That was my opening prayer. You know what I was praying? I was praying that week 2 in college football is just as good as what we saw in week 1. And you know what? I probably didn't need to pray for that. I have more important things to pray about. I think college football is going to deliver again. It almost never disappoints. Welcome into the Voice of College Football here on a Friday night. Great to have all of you here on a already active day here at the Voice of College Football. Earlier today, we released our conference rankings. Check it out. I need to have that video out on a Sunday or Monday, and will in the future. I had determined and was going to release that video after the games on, well, the games took us into Monday night for one thing, so it was already Tuesday morning before we had a complete look at all the teams in the country and therefore the conference standings of sorts. So we were already into Tuesday, and I just got around to releasing that video today. So check it out. Our conference rankings here at the Voice of College Football that we aim to release at least throughout this early portion of the season, in which we have games that are meaningful to determine conference rankings and comparing the conferences. Now, once the conferences start to play all conference games, and there's only maybe one or two significant non-conference games, then pretty much my rankings will hold throughout the rest of that season, because what can you gather from ranking the conferences when they're actually just playing each other? Regardless of what it is, I know that a lot of people like to look at conference games, and they tend to move conferences up and down based on conference games within the conference. But when you think about it, every conference goes 500. So we'll put that to rest most likely unless we have significant action non-conference until the postseason. But for it, as it stands right now, we will release a conference rankings each and every Sunday or Monday here at the Voice of College Football that will just follow through with the analysis that, of course, leads with the top 25 that actually makes sense. If you haven't caught that one, please check it out. And I am inviting anyone, please, certainly if you just have a comment or question about the top 25, and the top 25 that actually makes sense just makes sense. It's not perfect. There is no top 25 that's perfect. But you know what? I will state it. Think what you will. It is the best top 25 known to man. So I invite all those critics in particular to give me a call in the call-in show. And what we did last week, or just a few nights ago, in having a top 25 that actually makes sense reaction show, maybe we'll continue that, because I'm hoping to get more hatred thrown at me. Is what I'm really, really begging and pleading for. That's what I'm asking for. That's what I want. So all you fine folks that support the channel on a regular basis, I appreciate you calling during the top 25 that actually makes sense reaction call-in show. But I'm asking and really want those people that are just so hot and bothered by our rankings to give me a call. But it's never those people that call. They just fire out, insane criticisms and troll and hide. That's what they do. So we are just about 15 hours away from college football on a noon Eastern time window on Saturday. So we're going to preview week 2, and of course take all your comments and questions there in the live chat. We wouldn't mind a few super chats as well. And of course, take your calls here at the Voice of College Football. I will leave the link in the comments section right now. It's a good week of college football, not an exceptional, unbelievable, great week. But that's going to be dictated by the games. I'm glad that that's not always dictated by the matchup. Sometimes it looks like it's going to be an amazing week with all these amazing matchups, and they disappoint. And sometimes the matchups don't look so great. But most of the great games result from not necessarily the best matchups. And realize that on Saturday, we deliver post-game shows like nobody else. So we've got post-game shows for. I'll have to draw up the. I'll bring up the list of post-game shows that we have lined up for tomorrow, including, of course, man, his timing is exquisite. So talking about post-game shows, the gem of the bunch.
Yeah, you can't beat that timing, Mark. You like how I was literally just waiting in the chat, waiting for you to just please throw up that URL so I can be first in line.
I was starting to lay out the extravaganza of post-game shows that we hear, and then the crowning jewel of the post-game shows at the Voice of College Football. The host himself, Corey Bratta from the Hawkeye of the Storm, shows up.
I hope I'm not wearing out my welcome on this show. I enjoy calling in, as I've told you before, as a fan. But I just want to say this: you're right about the lineup of college football games this weekend. I will say for Iowa and Iowa State fans, I'm starting to, we had that conversation Tuesday about the over/under on this game, and I'm actually starting to think that that over might actually be a better take. Now, again, I'm not advocating somebody bet on college football. But the closer we get to this game, and from what I've heard from practice this week, I think there's going to be points scored. I know that sounds like we're kind of going against the grain of logic with Iowa, based on last week. But, Mark, you and I both know that there's oftentimes an overreaction from 1 week anyways. And I just think, I'm not saying it's going to be a 40-40, for another 44-41 game, but I think that Cyhawk series tomorrow, Mark, is going to be a bit more entertaining than people think. I've got Iowa. I'll just give away my pick because I released it yesterday. I got Iowa 26, Iowa State 21. So I actually got the over. And I kind of laughed when you told me the over was like 41.5 the other day. I did, and now I'm starting to buy into it. I think it's going to be the over. I think it's going to be one of those things where it's not real hard to envision 26-21. Somebody challenged me tonight and said, well, Corey, you said on Mark's show the other day that you thought it was ridiculous that you could hit 40-41, and you've got 47 points. Well, 26. Think about how you get to 26. So I'm obviously assuming the defense gets another safety. I think the defense produces the touchdown. There's 9. It's not hard to envision the defense putting Iowa in good enough field position to where you almost have an automatic field goal. So there's 12 points right there, and I do think Iowa will find a way to get in the end zone offensively, maybe through a short field and then one really impressive drive. Spencer Petras had a really nice second quarter against Iowa State last year. I also said my bold prediction, Mark, for this game, based upon, we had a conversation, sit in on Brian Ferentz's press conference on Wednesday, and I believe that Iowa, not from anything that he said directly, but I'm starting to think that if Spencer struggles in that first half, I think we're going to see Alex Padilla in the second half, because I'm not saying like Kirk's under fire, like he's on the hot seat, but I just think there's a lot of pressure more than ever before that I can remember, and so much of it now. It's always been directed to the quarterback, but so many fans, whether they're right or wrong, I've heard from so many more fans than ever before about the quarterback position and how, they're just done until Spencer Petras is benched. And I think that's unfair to Spencer to some extent, but I think the coaches genuinely do care about Spencer. And I'd have to think they realize at some point you got to do what's best for Spencer. And that may be, if he's struggling in this game, let's not put him out there in the second half for a fourth straight abysmal quarter. And let's remember too, Mark, he's got a 1-to-8 touchdown interception ratio in the last 6 games.
And so this comes from a quarterback who, if you take away this particular game, the bowl game, the Big Ten championship game, so you said 1-to-8 TD to pick ratio in the last how many games?
I believe that's the last 6 games. I don't have it up in front of me, but I believe that's the last 6 games. So there's really not a whole lot.
So that was a stretch drive of 3 games that led to winning the Big Ten West and getting to a Big Ten championship game. So the defense and special teams, again, good enough to weather whatever that TD to pick ratio was at the time, 1-to-5, 1-to-4, whatever it was.
Now let's remember, Mark, though, that Alex Padilla started that Nebraska game. And remember, Spencer came in relief in the second half. Mm-hmm. Alex played the Minnesota game. So, again, I'd have to go back and track okay, what 6 games are we looking at? I'm assuming that includes the games like Nebraska where he part of it. And then I'm assuming we're going, because he didn't play at all against Minnesota or Illinois. So maybe we're also looking at Northwestern. I don't remember if he threw a pick. Remember, he was played. You probably don't remember this, but maybe you do because you got that photographic college football memory. But the Northwestern game last year, he started that game despite being hurt. And a lot of fans were critical, including myself. Why are you starting a guy who's not 100% when you have a quarterback behind him who really there's no drop off, at least from what we'd seen between Spencer and Alex. And he started that game and basically had a terrible first quarter. And then they put Alex in and he led them to 3 straight victories. And then the Nebraska game, he struggled in the first half. But as you know, I think more was made out of that about Spencer coming in. And so many people, including Kirk, well, we wouldn't have won that game without Spencer. He came in and led us to victory. You remember that Nebraska game? You know who led Iowa to victory in that Nebraska game, Mark? I'll tell you, it comes down to one person. All right. And I'm not saying other people. There were certainly a lot of players on the Iowa special teams unit defense that helped. But you know who that person is that led Iowa to victory in the second half?
Well, is it the guy that blocked the punt?
Well, sure. But no, I was going to go more abstract. His name is Scott Frost. Oh. That's the guy that led lead him to victory. Sure. So, I mean, yeah, Spencer did come in the game and I thought he was okay, but he wasn't great. And so anyways, long story short, I have a gut feeling. I was told by somebody that is in the know with the goings on at Iowa that the players are pretty, they're ready for they're what's the word? This is going to sound morbid. They're thirsty for blood this week. And that doesn't mean, there's still a talent, difference and health wise, they just don't have the bodies. But I think they're going to find a way to have two offensive touchdowns. That's all I'm asking for is 2 offensive touchdowns. And I think the defense will do enough work to get to 26.
It's difficult to predict a safety, but you're doing it again here with the Iowa defense posting a safety. That gets you to 26. I thought that you were going for 2 touchdowns and 3 field goals get you to 26 as well.
No, I think they'll get another safety. And I say that because I don't know. I mean, last year, as you know, Iowa was punting. I don't know how many safeties Iowa had last year, but Tory Taylor is such a weapon. He really is. And I know people, I don't like the fact that he's like Iowa's most indispensable player, but in reality, he is. And so I just think with Tory Taylor there, he's so good at pinning you back inside the 10, inside the 5. And then, with this defensive line being even better than it was last year, one of those, I believe, I guess one was Joe Evans and one was Jack Campbell last week with the 2 safeties. But I just think they're set up for. I wouldn't be surprised. Here's a bold prediction without even looking at the rest of college football. And I know you don't like when I make these predictions without weighing the rest of the nation. But here's my prediction, Mark. Iowa will lead the country this year in safeties. How about that? Is that a fair prediction?
I would be more impressed with that prediction had you made it before last week's game.
Okay. Well, nevertheless, I'm sure there's got to be another team out there that had a couple.
Yes, well, not a couple. I doubt if there's anybody in the nation that had 2 safeties last week.
Yeah, you could be right. But I just think I doubt there's a team in the country that has as good of a defense paired with a punter in Tory Taylor. And I also think Iowa's, position that nobody ever looks at, but Iowa's gunners are just unbelievably good with Cooper DeJean and Terry Roberts. So no, I think they're gonna get there. And I also think that Iowa State's going to score. Every time I go into this game, I think Iowa State's going to come up with some trickery. I know Levi Stevenson, we were talking with him, and he said that, Iowa State doesn't really throw trick plays. They've only done it once. He brought up the LaMichael Petway double pass in 2019. That's not totally true because when I say trick play, I get to this maybe not a quote-unquote trick play, but that was also the same year that they threw a deep ball to, I can't remember the guy's name, speedster out wide. I should know this because I should know this. I see his picture on the wall in my doctor's office like every week or every time I go in there. But anyways, they kind of threw it wasn't really a trick play, but it was a kind of a trickeration type play to him deep in the same game. And I think that's kind of one of those things where Iowa, as great as Phil Parker is, he can sometimes be vulnerable to trick plays. We saw it against Michigan in the Big Ten championship game, Mark. The double pass there. I mean, I believe it was Jamari Harris, I think, that got fooled on that one. So that's all on tape. And I've talked about Riley Moss maybe being susceptible to double passes, or excuse me, not double passes, double cuts, double moves down the field and go routes. So, I see both teams scoring. And it just, law of averages. I know we used that term during Tuesday's show as well. I just think we're overreacting. I just can't. If we're walking away from that game at 13-10 on, tomorrow night and talking about that, that's going to be that mean at that point, Mark, that means, this is what we got. We're stuck with this. I think fans are hoping that last week was a one week deal and the improvement has not yet been realized. So
normally with a team, let's say that's typically an 8-4, 9-3 kind of team, I evaluate generally a 13-10 win similarly to a 33-30 win, because most people love the offense and they think, okay, if our offense doesn't score, what's wrong with the offense? And they generally accept a 33-30 win much more readily than a 13-10 win, while I try to counterbalance that to say, well, all the accusations you're making against your offense in a 13-10 win, you can make against your defense in a 33-30 win. It's the same, all things being equal, it's the same evaluation. It's just on one side of the ball or the other. But with this team, we know that the defense is good. So if you're right, if they have another 10-7 win, 13-10 win, then it's just confirmation of the issues on the offense, as opposed to, let's say we get a game that we're not necessarily expecting, or that you're playing out as a 26-21 game. Let's say if it's even higher than that, then I don't think anybody's going to be worried about the Iowa defense, as opposed to, okay, well, there's some life there. There's something to build on the offensive side of the ball. This is a quality win. This is a good showing.
Mark, Phil Parker doesn't really produce, with the exception being I'm trying to think when Norm stepped away. Do you remember when Norm Parker stepped away? What year that would have been?
No.
2012, 2011, somewhere. 2012 was obviously abysmal all around, and part of that was due to injury. And that Greg Davis passing offense was terrible. But my point is, Phil Parker does not produce bad defenses ever, as you know. But Mark, they've had high-scoring games against Iowa State. The 44-41 game in 2017 is an example, but that was still a good defense. That was just a pretty darn good passing attack. When Jacob Park was with the team, that was a pretty impressive passing attack. He had Hakeem Butler on that team, and trying to think who else. Alan Lazard was on that team.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be worried if Iowa gives up points but scores points. I think fans would much rather see that. I mean, it's not even. I think there's not. I don't think there's any question about that. Fans would much rather see a game in the 20s or maybe even the 30s. I can't believe we're talking about a game in the 20s being a high-scoring game, but that's the reality of Iowa football right now.
Now?
Well, let's be honest. Let me just say this. This is, I'm not defending Brian Ferentz, but Iowa scored points in 2020. I get it was a COVID year, but I don't remember where they're scoring on. Where did their scoring offense rank in the Big Ten in 2020, Mark? That's a good question. I think it was top 5. And you think about that that was a young. Honestly, they needed the offense. They needed to run the ball well that year because they had young linebackers. Jack Campbell and Seth Benson were hurt early in that year. I mean, they were young guys at the time. Jaimin Colbert had stepped away from football because of COVID. They had some young pieces on that team, and they found their way to 6-2. If it wasn't for that run game, they probably would have went 500.
Okay. Well, this is Iowa scoring a lot of points. 20, 20, 49, 35, 41, 26, 35, 28. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, again, those were, against some teams that were down. Michigan State was down. Michigan State's defense isn't very good anyways, but Michigan State was down. Minnesota was down.
Penn State
Wisconsin was
down.
down. Yeah. So, but I just more and more I think about it. I think that year was just a bit of it was fool's gold, unfortunately. So last thing I'll say, and then I know you got other callers waiting, Mark, but is Iowa State this week a top 5 game nationally in your mind?
Off the top of my head, no.
Okay, so are we probably off the top of your head? Are we looking at what, Kentucky, Florida, Texas, Bama? What else we got? I don't have it in front of me.
South Carolina, Arkansas, USC,
Okay.
Stanford, arguably. I don't know. Maybe not that game.
I don't know.
IU is a good game.
That's true. Yeah, and you got to what's interesting, and this is what you should have done a video on, Mark. Now that I'm saying this to you on a Friday night, you should have done a video on how this is the week of the future, the conference realignment matchups, because you've got BYU playing Baylor, you've got Texas playing Alabama.
Okay.
Is there another one besides
Texas Tech and Houston?
Texas Tech and Houston. Yeah. I was going to say Wazoo and Wisconsin, but obviously not.
If I wanted to stretch that point, I could speculate that there are all sorts of games that could be future.
Well,
like some people, and I could just speculate that there are all sorts of possible matchups that are future conference.
Now,
games.
Correct me if I'm wrong, and again, I should know this, but I'm not a college football guru as opposed to just being an Iowa guy. The Big 12 changes are taking effect next year, correct?
Yes.
But Oklahoma and Texas aren't gone until the following year.
Oh boy, you're making me remember what's going on with all this. Texas, Oklahoma is supposed to be in 2025. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to happen sooner. Oh my goodness. What did come out? Something came out about a month ago. I can't believe I don't remember it, with involving the Big 12. I clearly expect those changes to be synced.
Okay, because if they're not, I'm just going to say, if they're not, Mark, say so BYU, Houston, UCF, and Cincinnati come in next year, right?
Yes.
So if they come in next year and the Big 12 does not lose Texas and Oklahoma until 25, could we have a conversation about the Big 12 maybe being the second best conference? Could they move actually ahead of the Big 10 for a year before USC and UCLA join?
I think it's just a lot of Minnesota level teams joining the Big 12. I think it's really deep at that point, but I don't know that the qualities at the top that can match the Big 10, like 3 or 4 deep. But yeah, it's a really deep conference. It's 16 teams, and nobody's really that bad outside of Kansas and possibly Texas Tech or a TCU. So there's like 12 or 13 good teams, top 40 type teams. But like you, I want to see a mess. I don't want to see this work out perfectly. I would like to see a holdover just for the awkwardness of seeing teams have to stay in a conference that they want to leave, other teams entering, there being matchups that we only see for a year, hopefully 2 years. I just want to see the awkwardness of all that. I want to see, who gets the bragging rights. When, follow me on this. There are certain schools and programs that get bragging rights based on entering or leaving a conference, and then the conference can either look good or bad. Meaning, if Oklahoma and Texas, let's say they play in the Big 12 championship game the final 2 years of being in the Big 12, then that looks bad for the Big 12 because they're basically, it's stated on the field that we're losing our 2 best programs.
You know what that's like, Mark? You know what that's like? That's like that's like Notre Dame in 2020.
Yes.
That's exactly what that is.
Or on the flip side, it would be great if, now this obviously was announced, the Big 12 move of Texas, Oklahoma last summer. So we made it through one Big 12 season with Baylor and Oklahoma State going to the title game and leaving out Texas and Oklahoma. I would love to see if the Big 12 could continue on with with Texas, Oklahoma, let's say staying another year, another 2 seasons, and they neither one make the championship game, and the Big 12 can kind of like pump its chest a little bit and say, see ya, off to the SEC. You couldn't make our conference championship game for 3 consecutive years, either one of you. There's all of that dynamic. We could keep going on and on. Oklahoma and Texas join the SEC. Do they get put in their place? Like, you don't belong here, you're going to have to earn your way? Or do they come in and kind of make a splash? And
I'll tell you, Texas they got an opportunity this week to make a statement before they even are added to the conference. I'm certainly not predicting it. I've got Alabama covering the number, but if they go in, if they were to shock the world this week and beat Alabama, talk about changing. I mean, that would just change narratives on several notes. I mean, just one, Texas and being back and behind Quinn Ewers, and I mean that would just be a fascinating storyline.
Sure.
And it would just to me, and I've brought this up to you in the past, the Alabama situation, and I understand their storied success with Bear Bryant and and obviously with Nick Saban, but that's a program I question moving forward after Nick retires. I'm not saying it's. I'm guessing it will be sustainable, but certainly not to the level that they've been able to sustain it. But I just wonder the dynamic once you become a super conference, and I don't know how many more years Nick has in him. Would you be shocked if Saban walks away when that move takes place?
Would I be shocked? No. Would I be surprised? Yes. He just signed a contract extension. He has confirmed over and over and over how much he loves to coach. He's in great shape. He's not a man of 70 as we typically think of a man of 70. He's more like a man of his late 50s. I think he's going to continue to coach. He doesn't know what to do with himself otherwise. I think he's got 6 or 7 years left in him.
Well, that may be the case. But it's going to be how about one more matchup, Mark, that's possibly a future realignment matchup, and this is not going to make Beaver fans very happy. Oregon State, Fresno State. Is that listen, that's a reasonable one, right? There's I would say there's a greater than 50% chance those two teams are in the same conference in 3 years.
3 years?
Maybe, well, let's see. Is it 3 years or 2 years?
I'm going to go south of 50% on that one.
You don't think they'll be in the same conference in 3 years?
3 years?
3 years.
You mean it's going to be announced in 3 years? Or it's going to be reality?
I would have to think that with movement that's happening in the next 2 to 3 years, that there's going to be sped up movement across the playing field. That would be my guess.
Do you think that the Pac-12 is going to disintegrate?
I don't know that it's going to disintegrate, but I think it's going to evolve, right?
Oh, so you're thinking Fresno State joins the Pac-12?
Yes. Yeah.
Certainly one of my selections, yes. Fresno State, San Diego State.
Boise State would be on the list, correct?
Yeah, they'd be on the list. They'd be down on my list.
I mean, just obviously regionally they make sense. And I could see Fresno, Mark, I could see Fresno becoming I wouldn't say a Utah, that's not fair, but I could see them becoming like a Central Florida or maybe not a Cincinnati, but maybe a Houston. Now they don't have the recruiting. They don't have the recruiting hotbed that Houston does,
no, but they've got California, and they've been that in the past, and recently, currently, you could say that.
Well, I don't remember. I mean, I'm sure they've had down years, but I don't recall. And they're consistently in bowl games. And I just, in our private conversation we had last night, I said to you that I think it's insane how they consistently get teams to play road game, Power 5 teams to schedule home and homes with Fresno State. I'm assuming they're home and homes. I'm assuming that they're not scheduling one-time trips to Fresno for these games.
There are more teams in the Power 5 that go on the road to Group of 5 teams than you imagine, than you realize, I guess I should say, because you're tracking Iowa never doing that.
Well, I mean, I know like Minnesota went to Bowling Green, and I mean, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen very often in the Big Ten. I can tell you that.
Yeah, it happens elsewhere.
Well, I don't see.
Pac-12 teams regularly play at Air Force, at San Diego State, at Fresno State, at Boise State.
Well, I can understand. I can to some extent understand a game at Boise State, but anyways. All right, Mark.
All right, Corey.
Good stuff. Appreciate you taking my call, and we'll have everybody check out the unless you got something going on here, which you probably will, but we'll have the post game show with Don Patterson prime time tomorrow, probably about 6:30 by the time the game is over, unless we have another. There's forecast of rain, the rain and storms, Mark. So let's get a repeat of 2019. Let's make this a 6. I tell you, if it's a 6.5 hour, it was a 6.5 hour game in 2019. I didn't do a post game at the time, but that if it was a 6.5 hour game this week, I probably wouldn't get on the post game show until 10 or 11. So let's hope that doesn't happen. But I know that's not a late night for you, but for me, let's get this game in 3.5 hours. So
we'll just be in the mid part of our post game selections at that point. All right, Corey.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you so much. Corey Brada from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Corey, Coach Don Patterson on Iowa post game at the Voice of College Football on our Iowa channel tomorrow night at whatever point the Iowa State game concludes. And I will make some announcements about post-game shows here in just a second, but let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got Aiden on the line.
What's good, man?
What is good?
Nothing much. I'm just chilling out, except for a week of college football tomorrow. Man, I better see J.J. McCarthy start from week 3.
You better see McCarthy start in week 3, okay?
Yeah, he better be the starter from week 3 from here on out.
So Harbaugh announced that he's going to start each quarterback these first 2 games and did not give us a blueprint for week 3, did he?
No.
Okay.
And the reason why I feel that way is because watching Cade McNamara and just that Michigan offense.
Yeah.
I mean, Cade McNamara against Colorado State, which is the 84th pass defense in the nation last year, attempted 3 passes over 10 yards. He was 1 for 3 on those. And he attempted 0 deep balls.
Yeah, my decision if I was Jim Harbaugh would be pretty clear-cut. I'm not saying it would be an easy one, but it would be clear-cut, at least in my mind, what I needed to see. And if I saw from J.J. McCarthy, first of all, in practice, that he made the right reads, the right decisions on a regular basis, even if it wasn't quite as many times as Cade McNamara, that based on arm strength, arm talent, which is a different thing in my book, and running ability, he's my starting quarterback. And if I see that reflected in the games, which what we saw last week was Cade McNamara gave us a very mediocre performance, to be kind. And J.J. McCarthy hit on 4 of 4 passes and made some runs that Cade McNamara can't make. That if that continues, that in my book, that wouldn't even have to continue because based on the first week, McCarthy's a better quarterback. To me, he doesn't even have to outplay him by that much, and he should be the starting quarterback.
Yeah, like even in my opinion, if McCarthy has a similar game to what McNamara had last week, but we see those shots down the field and we see a little bit of his rushing upside when he starts, I'd still start him from week 3 from here on out.
Okay. Anything else, Aiden?
And USC might actually have a defense.
Okay.
That's something that I expected.
We'll know more after Saturday's game against Stanford. They played Rice.
And I think if Lincoln Riley can have a competent defense in the Pac-12, I could probably see him making a run at the CFP just because I feel like Caleb Williams is that good, and that wide receiver core is so deep as well.
Yeah. You forgot the other missing component in that formula is that the Pac-12 is that bad.
Well, who knows? Maybe Utah could still be ranked, and Oregon finds their way to be ranked when they play them in the Pac-12 title game or something, and Lincoln Riley just sneaks his way in there.
All right, Aiden. Anything else, sir?
Yeah.
All right. Good night. All right. Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. A lot of people have grown impatient. So we'll try to get through these calls. We had about 10 or 12 lined up, and now we're down to 3. We got Jimmy on the line. Jimmy, how you doing?
Hey, Mark, how you doing? Can you hear me good?
I got you. Loud and clear.
All right, that's good. I'm a Wake fan from North Carolina.
Nice.
Got 2 things to talk about. Your conference power rankings and the Vandy game this weekend.
Okay.
I guess we can start with the conference power rankings. I thought they were, I think what a lot of people would say. Personally, my only dispute would be right now I would have the ACC over the Big 12 after week 1.
Okay.
Just 'cause I don't know if the Big 12 has any impressive wins so far this year.
Well, they don't. You're right.
I know the ACC has a couple bad losses, but they have. I mean, the UNC win over App State. The UNC defense looks bad, but that's still a good win for UNC. And the FSU LSU game and the West Virginia game.
Yeah.
All better wins than any win the Big 12 got in week 1.
Yes. More good wins because the Big 12 didn't play anyone outside of playing Pitt. And that's certainly actually, if you look at what most people anticipate to be Pitt's level of ball versus West Virginia, you can almost phrase that as a good loss for the Big 12. But outside of that, yeah, I completely agree with you. Florida State had a good win. And Pitt had a good win. And like you say, North Carolina beat a good Group of 5 team, but that I don't necessarily, I put that on the neutral meter. Like North Carolina shouldn't be messing around with Appalachian State. We're talking about what should be an upper echelon Power 5 team against the upper echelon Group of 5 team. So that's an NC State completely lucked out, and Virginia Tech lost to a Group of 5 team. And who am I missing?
Boston College.
Boston College. So, yeah, the ACC had more pluses and minuses than the Big 12. The Big 12's week's going to be this week. You've got 4, 5, 6 games in the Big 12 that matter this week that are really going to tell us something about the conference.
Yep. While we're on the topic of the ACC, the ACC has a really weird habit of scheduling Group of 5 games on the road. I think more so than a lot of other conferences, especially like the in-state teams in North Carolina, like UNC going to App State and North Carolina State going to ECU in week 1. Like if you're going to do that, I would wait at least a few weeks because you have the week 1, problems that you deal with penalties and things like that.
Yep.
And NC State's offense looked totally just not competent against the ECU team, and UNC had the opposite problem against App State. No defense and a boneheaded play on the onside kick to take it all the way back for a touchdown instead of just ending the game. So moving on to the Wake Vandy game, I think you talked about this earlier on your West Virginia show. You got around to it, but Sam Hartman is starting this weekend for Wake. I'm not going to say Vandy can't win, but a lot of people like Vandy fans, SEC fans think that game will be close. And I just don't like Vandy beat a Hawaii team that I'm not a Hawaii expert or anything even close, but my understanding is Hawaii has quite a few walk-ons on that team because they had a transfer exodus this offseason. And then they looked really bad against an FCS Elon team where in the second half where they got outscored by double digits. So to me, like Vanderbilt's 2-0, and that's their best record in a while, but they're still not a good team in my mind. And I know that anything can happen, but I just cannot see how that defense is going to stop the Wake Forest offense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying because you can almost, in a sense, take the SEC label off of Vanderbilt. They're just unlike anybody else in the SEC. Their level of player, their roster talent isn't anywhere close to the second worst roster in the SEC. And I know people got excited because they beat Hawaii, and that got a lot more attention than it should have because it was played week 0 and nobody else was playing. So people paid attention, and 63 grabs people's attention. But like you say, that win is pretty irrelevant. Yeah, and I think the spread's 13.5.
Yep, jumped from 6 before the Hartman announcement was made.
Yeah. On one hand, there could be some concern that Sam Hartman hasn't practiced, but at the same time, he's a veteran quarterback and he's got a veteran receiver core led by A.T. Perry, of course, that he's played with for a long, long time. And there shouldn't be a whole lot of time needed to get them on the same page.
Yeah, and still until another team can prove otherwise, Wake and UNC to me are probably the 2 top receiver cores in the ACC right now. That UNC receiver core looked good against App State, even without Josh Downs.
Yeah.
And the Wake receiver core, just A.T. Perry, basically 5 ACC caliber guys who are ready to play at any moment.
I would agree with that. And we'll see if Vandy can take advantage of Wake's awful defense.
Yeah, I'm hoping. Well, VMI is no indication of obviously how the defense is going to be. I think an average Wake Forest defense means that Wake has a good shot at the ACC, and it all comes down to that Clemson game for the most part. Hoping for Wake's sake that DJ is still starting for Clemson by that game.
Well, I don't want to blow out of proportion what Cade Klubnik did. It wasn't so much what he did, it's how he looked on that last drive against Georgia Tech. He just looked comfortable. And if he's the same, we all know that some players acclimate themselves well to pressure and others don't. But if he's the same guy in the middle of a game against NC State when the score's tied in the third quarter that he is on the final drive against Georgia Tech when the game's decided and he can just kind of cut loose and let it go, he showed us in about 3 or 4 throws that he's a better thrower of the football than DJ Uiagalelei.
Yeah, and his ability to run is something that Wake struggles with against quarterbacks that can do that. I imagine I'm wondering if he's not playing because of the decision-making thing in practice, or if it's more so. I guess Dabo didn't play Trevor Lawrence when he was a freshman until week 5, so it could just be Dabo doesn't want to unseat a more veteran quarterback until he has to. Would be my guess as to what's going on.
Yeah, I still think that DJ's a bit of a mystery. I just can't get out of my mind that he did look as good as he did for 2 games against 2 quality teams. And there was much conjecture about and confirmation of his injury issues last year.
Yeah, if he bounces back this year, it's just he was hurt last year. If he doesn't start bouncing back soon, then it's what happened? Did an injury derail his whole career and he could just never get back to the same? Yeah. Or was he, he hit the scene, didn't feel the pressure or something in those 2 games he played in 2020?
Yeah.
Since then, he's just being the starters and it is in his head or something, and he just can't get past that. Well, I think that's all I got for you, Mark. I appreciate the time.
Jimmy. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, keeping it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. I want to remind you to shop Amazon using the link in the description section. Again, we know that most of you shop Amazon at some point, so please check out the link that we provide in the description section of all the videos. Just grab the link, put it somewhere where you will remember it when you do your shopping. And also keep in mind that we've got post-game shows. My goodness, post-game shows with Ohio State, Arkansas State, Michigan, Hawaii, Penn State, Ohio, Nebraska, Georgia Southern, Iowa, Iowa State, USC, Stanford, Oklahoma, Kent State, Texas, Alabama. I can't believe I'm remembering all these teams and who the bad teams that they're playing. West Virginia, Kansas, Miami, Southern Miss. Who else? Virginia Tech and whoever they've got this week. And I think that's about all of it. Clemson, Furman. Anyway, we've got the rundown. We will have it posted on our community page as we always do first thing in the morning. So track your favorite teams post-game tomorrow, including Alabama, Texas, from both the Texas standpoint and the Alabama standpoint. Speaking of which, Reasonable Gump's here.
Mark, man, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm good. How you doing?
Doing all right. Hey, man, I got a quick question here.
Yeah.
I asked you, think about the Big Ten real quick. Which program, if I ask you to name, is just the bottom feeder, the team that carries the logo, but no one really thinks is like a real Big Ten team? They're just kind of there to get the market or whatever purpose they serve.
I think the two programs that have the least going for them right this second, but one of them is an obvious choice because they've only been in the league for 7 or 8 years, so they don't have that identity with the Big Ten, is Rutgers, and then it's also Illinois.
Okay. So, yeah, I was sort of thinking Rutgers would be, like you said, the obvious answer to that question. Now, when Rutgers goes out and beats a terrible team, everyone's usually like, oh, good job, Rutgers. Look at you. Get out there, get that job done. Get 4 or 5 wins a season. Everyone's patting them on the back, pretty much celebrating because that looks like an amazing season to their standpoint.
I know what's
and
coming.
Yet, apparently, when Vanderbilt does it, the words are it's irrelevant. No one cares. It's not a real team they beat. See, that's the reaction. And the word irrelevant actually just came from you. I just got that from you 5 minutes ago. Why do you think that is? Why can't we acknowledge that Vanderbilt is a terrible program, but so the fact that they're beating terrible teams should not be looked down on? They're beating teams pretty much at their level, aren't they?
Well, apparently not at their level if they beat a team by 53 points. A team that plays in the Mountain West that's not even going to do anything in the Mountain West should not be on an SEC team's level.
Right. But Rutgers beats up those teams, and we don't chastise them for it.
Rutgers just beat Boston College.
I'm just saying it's kind of.
I don't know where we're headed.
Don't you think we're kind of throwing some disrespect at Vanderbilt by not acknowledging their success this year? This is a team that almost lost to UConn last year.
Okay. Vanderbilt. I don't know what to tell you. I was just making the point to the previous caller that Vanderbilt is separated from the Big Ten or from the SEC, unlike anybody else in any other conference.
Unlike anyone else. So you don't think their situation is parallel to Rutgers in the Big Ten?
No. Rutgers is more competitive right now in the Big Ten than Vandy is in the SEC, unless they show us something that I'm not expecting.
Pre-Greg Schiano, though, I don't think that would be accurate.
Good point. But we're not pre-Greg Schiano. Yeah, Rutgers lost 21 straight. I think their losing streaks in the conferences are identical right now. I think Vandy's number is 21. And I know it's been ingrained in my head for 3 or 4 years that Rutgers lost 21 straight in the Big Ten, and most of them were 52-0 kind of games. Okay, so
one
you're
game-
wanting respect for Vandy because they beat Hawaii and Elon. Is that what this call is about?
Not originally, but when I heard someone call their win irrelevant, I felt I kind of had to stick up for them a little bit.
It's relevant for them. It's irrelevant to the whole of college football.
All right. Suppose that's the best we can ask for. What the call was actually going to be about was, of course, tomorrow's big game.
Yeah.
Or big in my eye, but not so big in a lot of people's eye. You know, your buddy SG1 Sports, he put out a video pretty recently about top 10, possible upsets. And
Yeah.
Texas wasn't even on the list. Didn't even get an honorable mention.
Okay. They shouldn't be.
Now, see, I don't quite agree with that. Now, maybe I'm falling in the same trap that I did last year when people were trying to say that Miami, was going to be competitive with Alabama, and of course, no one really quite knew just what a terrible team they were. But I don't know, man. Well, you know this better than anyone. When's the last? I know. By the way, I know the answer too. But just tell the audience, when's the last time that Alabama went into a non-SEC road environment?
They went to Penn State
2010.
in like
Yes.
2011, 2012.
Well, yeah, it's 2011 because we hosted them in 2010. Okay. My bad.
Yeah.
So this is not something they're used to, and I don't know. There was, I think, I don't quite remember which year. I think it was 13 or 12 or something. I remember one time where we went to Arkansas and they had scored 14 points in like 3 minutes of game time.
Yeah.
They threw a touchdown on the first play of the game. This is when that guy Ryan Mallett was there.
Yep.
They threw a touchdown on the first play of the game. I think they actually got a turnover and scored immediately again right after. And I don't know. I can sort of see Texas doing something kind of similar. Just come out there and throw some haymakers right away.
Well, I don't know if you heard the comment I made to somebody else, caller 3 or 4 calls back, that, or maybe I made this on the last show. Anyway, Texas is unlike anybody else in college football for this reason and others that we won't get into, like politics, but the dysfunction of the program. But in terms of the players on the field, they have more talent than anybody in the country, in which nobody on the field for Texas has really accomplished anything, achieved anything. I'm not talking individually. I don't want to take away from what they've done. Xavier Worthy had a great season last year, but they've not achieved anything on the field, on the scoreboard that's significant. They're the only team in the country like that has that kind of collection of talent where nobody has tasted success. They don't know what it means. They don't know how to get there.
That's interesting.
Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I guess you're right. They literally haven't done anything.
They haven't done anything. So if Sarkisian's a good coach, they're going to accomplish that at some point. They're going to start winning games and beating the kind of teams that they should. First, start beating the teams that they should just flat out beat, and then start beating some good teams. But beating Alabama, wow. This is the way I look at it, is that I think if Alabama was at home and comfortable, that they'd go in there and take care of business. But I almost think that it's a detriment or a disadvantage for Texas to be at home. I think that may actually piss off Alabama. Saban might get through to them that this is going to be a hostile crowd. This team wants to prove that they're on your level and we need to put them in their place. And, people are going to you're going to hear all sorts of horrible things spewed at you. You're going into an environment that you've never seen before. So let's go out and punch them in the mouth and just be, what's the Lawrence Taylor term? Raving maniacs, raging dogs, whatever he
never heard of
says
it
in that video that gets played all over the place. Yes. I don't think this game's going to be close.
Well, it may not be in the final scoreboard, but it sounds like it might. Whoever scores first, it might actually come down to who wins the coin flip, and who decides to. And in fact, I'm going to be a little shocked if whoever wins the coin flip, if they defer it. Don't you kind of get that feeling that both teams want to come out and throw the first punch?
Yeah, that's a good point. I can see that.
And don't get it twisted to Texas fans who are watching. I'm not predicting Texas to win, but I don't know. For some reason, I'm just going to jump right into this trap, same trap I did last year with Miami, even though this time I can see it. I can see it perfectly, and I'm going to jump headfirst into it. I just, for some reason, get this feeling like this is going to be a bit more of a fight, at least for first three quarters. I mean, look, at LSU was, everyone keeps wanting to say it. 2019, LSU was the best team they ever saw, right? And that was a one-score game. And that was not a great Texas team either.
True.
So,
yeah. Yep. On the road in Austin. Absolutely. That was a really good
game of the season, wasn't it?
It was a really good game. Yeah. Tremendous game. Like 45-38 game.
Yeah.
Texas is at home. If Texas's offensive line can play the game of their lives and Sarkisian can scheme up enough to take the pressure off the offensive line, because that's where I think Alabama has a huge advantage.
Mm-hmm.
I'm weighing what you're saying about the Miami game last year versus Texas. Texas is a more talented team than that Miami team. They're just more talented. I was about to say they're better, but they haven't proven to be better. They're just more talented. Got considerably more talent than that Miami team. They're at home as opposed to a neutral site.
Mm-hmm.
And the other interesting comparison would be Miami had a much lesser quarterback, but a much more experienced quarterback, where Texas is a much more talented, gifted thrower who doesn't have any experience except for one game.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least two out of the three things you just said sort of lean towards the argument I'm sort of making begrudgingly. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. I think this is going to be one of those situations where this game is sort of a fight for the first half or so, and then maybe we'll pull away in the fourth quarter, kind of like we'll just end up out-talenting them, sort of like we did with Tennessee last year, where Tennessee made it a game for 2.5 quarters, but then they just ran out of gas.
Yeah, and I just think players that are used to that environment, used to that kind of game, that kind of intensity, and used to being able to close it, and a coach that knows how to close it.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing I definitely don't think is a factor that I've seen other people say is some people try to talk about how the heat might play a factor and give Texas a little bit of advantage, and I don't really get that. Alabama is a hot weather school. That's kind of strange. Well, so some people tried to say likewise that cold weather favored Michigan against Ohio State last year, and I'm like, Ohio State's a winter school. They're a cold weather school. That doesn't make any sense to me. But I don't think weather will play a factor at all in this game.
Yeah, when it's typically 102 degrees in Austin, it's 97 in Tuscaloosa. It's not that
Right.
It's not that big a deal. It's typically I'd say anywhere from 8 to 12 degrees warmer in Columbus than it is in Ann Arbor.
Oh, okay. Well, that's actually more than I thought, but
something like that. But it's not. Yeah, when it's winter, it's winter. When it's winter, it's 19 in Ann Arbor and it's 28 in Columbus. It's
it's still bone chilling.
Yes.
Either way. All right. Well, that's all I had. I just want to get your thoughts on what I think is a big game. I know a lot of people might lean more towards probably Florida and Kentucky or Tennessee and Pitt. Yep. And those are two big, really good games. Yeah. I'm looking forward to both of those too. No shade at all. But
absolutely.
I think I think the noon game may be more entertaining than what people think. So
I hope
we'll
so.
see. I hope I'm wrong. Just putting that out there.
I hope you're right. All right, Reasonable Gump. Good talking to you.
You see you, man.
All right. Looks like we got a few Discord guys coming up here. So perfect time for me to let you know we got Discord available for you. Go to MarkRogersTV on Patreon, patreon.com, search MarkRogersTV. You're all set. You get your Discord link. Get my picks, 13-8 against the spread last week, even though I got screwed a couple times late at the goal line, Cam Rising and such. Still 13-8 against the spread. We got 22 media members, guys like Steve Dace and Tony Gerdeman, fill in the blank, a bunch of other guys, Corey Brada, who provide their picks straight up and against the spread, and Steve Merrill from Wager Talk with his under the radar pick of the week. But again, it's Discord. That's the star of the show. That's the headliner. You get your Discord link. You can join the guys in the chat there, talk college football whenever you want. They do after show parties. It's the whole deal right there. All right. Speaking of which, look at Will. Will's here. Will's enjoying man, they filled up the stadium well before kickoff, I see, behind you. And yeah, they just can't wait for Marshall.
Can't wait for the Thundering Herd.
Yes, absolutely. That's the biggest game on the schedule.
Two of the most famous college football teams, if we're talking about movies, with We Are Marshall and Rooney.
Marshall. They made their claim to fame. Unfortunately, of course, that's a tragedy, but good movie.
Did you see have you been watching the Louisville UCF game?
I've got it on over here, but I got to say I can't really lock in to know what's going on.
Malik Cunningham had a crazy 50-yard touchdown run.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm kind of pulling for Louisville because Lance Taylor, former Notre Dame coach, is the offensive coordinator at Louisville. Okay. I don't quite remember what his position was, but yeah. But so for the games this weekend, do you think that Spencer Rattler's do you think he's a good quarterback? Do you think he's getting too much flack after his performance in week 1, or do you think he's just not a great college football player?
Yeah, he's a good quarterback. Great? No, not great. Yeah. He's a good college quarterback. He's a top 15 quarterback in the country. I didn't see any of those. There were far better games, of course, on. I didn't see any of those plays. I talked to my South Carolina guy. We got a preview out there, folks. If you want to see South Carolina, Arkansas talk.
Running back coach. Okay,
he's
he was
not
running
blaming
back.
The interceptions on Spencer Rattler. At least one of them.
Yeah. So what game are you most excited for this weekend, Mark?
I was actually just checking since you brought up the Louisville UCF game as to whether I picked that game, but that's not on my picks this week. Anyway, most excited. There's so many games that are on that second tier, not Ohio State, Notre Dame, but second tier, like Arkansas, South Carolina, BYU, Baylor, Tennessee, Pitt, Iowa State, Kentucky, Florida. So if I could only watch one game, is what you're asking me. If I could only watch one game, I'm going to watch Florida, Kentucky.
Yeah. Even though Kentucky's running backs out.
Yeah, he's not my deciding factor on what game to watch.
Yeah, I know. I was excited for that game, but if Will Levis has to do it all, it might be tough.
Yeah, I'm thinking the same thing. Although, I think again, there's overreaction to week 1, and that might be one.
Yeah. Also, BYU has their top 2 receivers out against Baylor, so I immediately just hopped over to Baylor money line.
Well, I'm glad to see that or know that. Not that I want people to be hurt, but I picked. Yeah. Well, I shouldn't give away my picks. They're of course under lock and key on Patreon, and they're extremely valuable, folks. They're worth $5 a month. Well, they're only worth maybe like 50 cents a month because the Discord's worth $4.50 a month.
Yeah.
So my picks are worth about 50 cents a month, but I will give that a one away since it already came out of my mouth. I took Baylor in the points, and I took Baylor straight up.
Yeah.
Yep.
I just think they're the better. I mean, I'm not saying that BYU isn't like well coached, but like I just really trust Dave Aranda and his coaching, and I think he has a bit more talent in there
Yep.
as well.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So for Notre Dame, I'm going to be really disappointed if we don't open up the passing more. Because like I understood that like Tommy Rees was like a little worried about Tyler Buckner in his first start against one of the best teams in the country. But like I gotta see some. I'm not saying we're playing like Iowa, but like I want to see us just be more aggressive, just go at teams like we never really did under Kelly.
Well, don't elevate your Notre Dame offense to the category of Iowa. They're in a class all by themselves.
Yeah, but like I want to see more of like not like an air raid offense, but like a little more of that sprinkled in there than just the run.
Yeah, he threw, I think, 16 passes last week.
Yeah, that's not enough for me. I mean, that's not at least 25. I think is reasonable. What do you say?
Yeah, I would think against a Marshall team that you should be working some things. A win can't be taken for granted, but yeah, there just weren't many plays in that game for Notre Dame. Once they got stalled on offense in the second half, boy, the game really sped along.
No.
Because both teams ran it and they were getting off the field 3 and out. So he threw 16 passes. I think they only ran like 49 plays.
Mm-hmm. I also want to see the offensive line improve a bit, just because like I understand like Ohio State has a good defensive line, but even without Jarrett Patterson, I didn't expect us to get dominated like that. Our offensive line just to get dominated like that, like it did. Maybe not to the extent it would have last year with before Harry Houston came back, but like I don't know. I was a little. I think you were too, Mark. How surprised how good Ohio State's defensive line looked. I hope it was just that and not our offensive line's just as bad as it was last year, but it just surprised me. I don't know.
I don't know what to go there. Ohio State raved. Ryan Day, Jim Knowles raved about Mike Hall, and he was the guy in the middle that really just was a menace. Just was crazy good for Ohio State. And Tommy Eichenberg was good enough at linebacker to win the Nagurski Award for the Defensive Player of the Week nationally. Yeah, they haven't played a game like that against a good team in quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tending to believe it, although it was that kind of game. Notre Dame wanted to make it that kind of game. So, the score and the number of plays and the yardage played into that too.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
And like the defense overall was good, but the linebackers were really the only thing. The thing that like just killed us, the linebacker play killed us in the second half. That allowed Ohio State to score their 21 points. As they just looked like they were guessing out there. They didn't really. I'm not saying they didn't know what they were doing, but I think Ohio State made Notre Dame look like that, and I don't know. That was a little disappointing for me. That the linebackers kind of were just. They looked like they were out there to dry.
Well, are you talking about against the run or against the pass?
I think more against the run.
Yeah. Now I would say I don't know that they weren't in position. I didn't rewatch the game. I watched every play, of course, but I didn't rewatch the game. And I did see. I was watching, I think, the Big Ten Network this afternoon, and I just saw, replays of a number of the key runs in the fourth quarter, and I think it was just more of a physical pounding than it was people being out of position.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think about? I know we've talked about it a lot on the Pac-12 show and the USC pregame show, but do you think that? How do you think that? Do you think USC is just going to blow Stanford away, or do you think David Shaw will keep it to be competitive and give his team a chance to win?
Well, looking at my pick here, I think on paper it looks like a USC blowout, but I do think that that there are a lot of things working in this matchup that could keep it close.
Mm-hmm. I don't want you to give away your picks, but I do kind of want to. So like, don't do that. But and for Tennessee and Purdue, do you think that Tennessee is just gonna? Do you think that the air raid will be like too much? Do you think Hendon Hooker will be too much, or do you think that Pitt's defense can really stand up like it did last year against a lot of good teams?
So you don't want me to give away my picks, but is Tennessee going to run?
Well, I don't want you. Yeah, I want people to join. I want more people to join the Discord. So,
well, yeah. I think that I love that matchup. I want to watch that game as usual. There's too many games for me to watch, but West Virginia dropped passes, couldn't always protect JT Daniels, and they put 31 points on the board against Pitt. You know, I have a lot of respect for Hendon Hooker. I think he's really good and underrated by many. And Josh Heupel's as good a play caller, not just a play caller, someone who is put together an offensive scheme, a system, as well as anybody in the country.
Yeah, I think really I'm surprised. I mean, I guess I know why more people aren't talking about this game, but Oregon State going to Fresno, like, I don't know. That's the game that maybe not, I don't know. To me, it might be the most exciting game just for me, just because I really like what Jonathan Smith's doing at Oregon State, and I also like Jay Kaner at Fresno State. I don't know. To me, that game might excite me the most out of all of them this week.
Yeah, it's not a game that is a star brand game, but I would think that most of College Football Nation would be a bit surprised what the line is on that game because of how good Oregon State looked against a quality opponent last week, and to be basically a pick'em game. But yeah, Jeff Tedford, Jay Kaner, Fresno State typically plays the Pac-12 well.
Yeah, Boise's up 10-0 on New Mexico right now. It was 0-0 for a while, but Boise did take the lead on New Mexico. Do you think that wait, let's see what else I was gonna say. Well, yeah, and do you think that Wake and Vandy will be close at all? Like, do you think that game will be competitive?
I would tend to think that that if it was another quarterback, that there might be some issues coming back, or having not practiced for as long as it has been the case for Sam Hartman. But he's so experienced, and his receivers are experienced, so they have a lot of time together, and both defenses are pretty bad. Expect a lot of points.
Yeah, and no dependent fanatic. He asked me in the chat. I still don't want Notre Dame to join a conference, but if we had to join a conference,
I
would. This is very just selfishly, just because I really don't want to join the Big Ten. I would have to say ACC, just because I really don't. The Big Ten's they've shafted Notre Dame, and now they want Notre Dame.
They shafted Notre Dame when? This was when? What year? We're holding grudges against people that have been dead for 40 years, or probably longer. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah.
You want to play Georgia Tech and Duke and Syracuse every week?
I mean, it's better than giving in to the Big Ten. I don't know. I mean, if we had to join the Big Ten, I would still watch Notre Dame, of course, but I would be a little sad. I would feel like we sold out.
Okay. Your spitefulness is going to interfere with your bank account too. Understand that.
Well, I mean, we have donors. Well,
I understand you have money elsewhere. Sure. That's like
Mhm.
thinking, okay, I got plenty of money in my budget and I pay
Mhm.
my bills and I got plenty of money, but I'm
Mhm.
just out of spite going to pay $800 a month for my cable bill just because I don't like the guy at this other cable company, even though they give me better service and they only charge me $100 a month. I'm going to pay $800 a month for cable over here,
Mhm.
and it's worse service, and less people are going to watch. This. It's just there's every advantage in the world to joining the Big Ten over the
I
AC.
know, I know. All right, one more question for the games. Is there any I think you know the answer to this question, but do you think that Arizona can keep it a little close against Mississippi State? I can't see that happening. I don't know. I think Will Rogers is too good. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
I
All right.
I got to say that. Well, my picks on Patreon, folks.
I
It,
know, I know.
it's worth
I
it's not
enjoy
even
I like
$5 a
talking
month. You
about
get so
them.
many other things. It's not even $5 a month. It's more like 50 cents a month for my picks.
All right.
All right, Will.
Well,
We get a
that
line
was
going here.
fun. All
Thanks,
right.
Will. Enjoy the games.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. Again, Amazon's a reminder, post-game shows all over the place. If you've got a team, we probably have a post-game show for you, including Michigan. One Scoop John's coming up, and also Notre Dame and Will. So we've got those post-game shows lined up for you and many more. Dr. C's on the line. What's going on, sir?
Hey, how's it going, Mark?
I'm doing well.
Hey, well, you know what? Will pretty much asked all the questions that I was going to ask. He
We
does a
asked
great
about
job.
17 questions, I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
I think
really going to go into, the Baylor BYU game. I thought that was one that people were kind of forgetting. But I guess I could kind of talk about this. BYU has an advantage that could almost be performance enhancing to a degree. And that's that you have a 25, 26-year-old going up against a 19-year-old. Is that something that should be looked at? Does that make sense?
Well, if BYU was, the equivalent of the junior high kid who got held back 3 times, and he's 15 years old and he's playing quarterback and nobody can tackle him, yeah, but BYU loses. When did they ever get ranked even in the top 25 in the final poll?
I mean, they do well. I mean, they're
I'm
do
guessing
they?
they've been ranked in the final top 25 twice in the last 10 years. Like they're not that good.
Hmm.
So until this presents itself as a disadvantage for everybody else, those 19-year-olds that they play, typically if they're from a major school, beat BYU.
Yeah, I guess you know what? I guess it's not. You're right. It's not a factor until they start winning, right? So if
Yeah.
they started going undefeated, even in their conference, then all of a sudden it would become an issue, and then there might be an investigation.
Yes. Well, they're joining the Big 12 here in the next
Yeah,
year.
I mean,
but before
chances
this,
are,
yeah.
chances are they will be less successful in the Big 12 than they are with their current. Yeah.
Exactly. So when they joined the Big 12, I ran the numbers over the last 10 years against the Power 5, and they're a 500 team against the Power 5.
Yeah. Well, that should be a fun game tomorrow night. The other one, Mississippi State and Arizona. Any chance that Arizona could pull it out in the desert? They're at home. It's at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock on the East Coast where no one will watch it. If Arizona wins the game and no one sees it, is it a win?
Well, Arizona did win one game last year and nobody watched it. So I don't know when the last time anybody watched an Arizona football game, but the last time I think I watched them play, they lost 70-7 to Arizona State a couple of years ago. Yeah, I have to see more. I just think there's a physical difference between those two teams based on the players they've recruited that are on the roster. Although Arizona's got 50 new players on its roster. 50.
Yeah. Yeah, and the San Diego State, they had a great season last year. I don't know how good they are this year. But that was at least a win that, turned some people's heads for Arizona,
Yeah, me included.
So, yeah. And lastly, I'll let you go with it. So I was looking at the recruiting for this last year, and I know people were talking about Vanderbilt. I mean, what was it? Vanderbilt ended up with the 32nd recruiting class this year, beating out the likes of West Virginia, Baylor, Purdue, Nebraska, Wisconsin. But
yeah, good. That's not typical of them.
Yeah,
but
they won one game in 3 years.
Their composite is 32. You're right. 32 is their composite for this 2022 class. They didn't do well in the transfer portal, so that dropped them overall to 45. But the traditional recruiting ranking is 32. But based on what Derek Mason was doing, 49, 52, 58, 41. I'll go one more. 2017 was 65. They were in the 50s, between 45 and 65 before that. So this is an exceptional recruiting class. So Clark Lee, the same thing he said at SEC Media Days, where he said, we're going to have the best program in the country, must be saying that to recruits, and some of them are believing him, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. So, hey, James Franklin went 9-4 2 years in a row. Is that the greatest coaching job of all time? Arguably, when you put it into context.
9-4 twice.
Yeah, at Vanderbilt.
What was that? 2012 and 13.
It was 2012 and 13. They won 5 and 3.
Went to Penn State. Yeah,
in the SEC.
Or maybe 11 and 12. But anyway, I think 13 was his first. No, 12 and 13 was Bill O'Brien. So 14 was James Franklin. Anyway, that's pretty crazy. Now, the SEC Eastern Division was a bit off then, but still, it's the SEC and SEC schedule, and he went 5 and 3 both years in the SEC.
Yeah, that's impressive. Can anyone else could have pulled that off? Maybe only Saban?
Well, if James Franklin did it, then there are other people that can do it.
Jeez. The James Franklin hate Israel.
I have no hate for James Franklin, but I'm just calling it like I see it. He's not one of the best coaches in the country. He's good at his job, but he's not elite. So, yes, there are other coaches that could get Vanderbilt to where James Franklin got them. Yes. Yes, there are other coaches in the country that could coach Penn State to go 7 and 6. Yes. Or 10 and 3 or 11 and 2 or much better than James Franklin. James Franklin better turn in a good season here. He's getting paid way too much money and has way too much talent on his roster to be losing 5 and 6 games a year. All right, Dr. C, anything else? I think Dr. C has left us anyway. All right, let's keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. The checklist again, Amazon link. When you shop Amazon, please use the link in the description section. You might as well, huh? Unless you completely hate my guts. It's the same shopping experience. And You send a few pennies my way. Amazon's worth 1.6 trillion. That's the last number I said. 1.6 trillion. That's crazy to think about. Send a few pennies my way when you shop on Amazon. And again, we've got post-game shows all over the place, and you'll get the schedule on the community page. I don't know how many people see the community page. I make out like a little schedule. It says Tuesday live schedule, Wednesday live schedule, and I list all the shows. And if you've got to go to a different channel, it's got the link there, and I put the whole list of all the shows right there. So check it out, because I'll have all the post-game shows listed and approximately what time they'll be. Now, every so often, somebody will make the comment, and I'll refrain from calling it a particular type of comment, that why wasn't the Ohio State postgame on at 4 o'clock? Well, they were still playing. That's why. The postgame shows are after the game. Okay. That's an estimated time. All right. We got John here. What's going on, John?
Hey, Mark. How we doing? Lots of good callers tonight, bringing the heat.
Yeah.
About Franklin. Let's remember he has Jimmy Sexton as an agent, and the reason he gets all the money, it's maybe not necessarily because he's the best coach ever, but he's playing these schools against each other. He's saying, okay, we're talking to USC, we're talking to LSU, we're talking to this school. Okay, give us $9.5 or whatever it is, $1 million a year, and it works for him. So, make that money, I guess.
Yeah, it's when somebody brings up that type of scenario, my first thought is, well, if we understand that, shouldn't the schools understand that? But I think you bring up a good point, and it's that's what makes him worth millions of dollars as an agent.
Yeah, he does a good job. So anyway, I've got a couple quick topics. I obviously saw your top 25 that make sense list. And I saw Michigan was 17, which I think is fine. Given your criteria, is where it should be, around there. I actually was scratching my head only about Bama.
Okay.
Because so my question is, like, how good does what goes into that? Like, how good does an opponent have to be? Because Colorado State, we know they're a JV team. UTEP, I know that's why Oklahoma wasn't in. They're not very good either. So what do you like? What's your criteria for like a good team that would put someone at number 1 or 2 or 3 in the rankings?
So obviously, in week 1, I have to make the most assumptions about how good these teams are, because we've got nothing to go on except for the thought that Michigan is this coming into the season. We believe 98% of college football nation thinks that they're one of the top 5 to 10 teams in the country. So, and I think the further we go down that list of teams, the less we know or are sure of how good they are. I think we're less sure of how good Louisville is versus how good we think Ohio State is. Like, we're going to be fooled if Ohio State goes 7-5. We're all going to be stunned. But Louisville, could they be 8-4? Yeah. Could they be 5-7? Yeah. Could they? So there's a lot of, I have to make an estimation of how good the teams are, therefore how I can evaluate the wins. Georgia. So in my estimation, Ohio State had the best win of the week in terms of just who they beat, not the score, not the level of domination. I believe I'll give them a slight edge over Florida, over Utah. So those I judge to be the 2 best wins of the week. Florida beating Ohio State, beating Notre Dame. But Oregon, most we consider, now I'm hearing that Oregon's awful and they're trash and they can't play and all that. But prior to Saturday, I think we all generally thought Oregon was at least a top 25 team.
I did.
Most people more in the 10 to 15 range. Well, Georgia annihilated them. So that level of performance raised that win, in my estimation, to the top spot in the rankings.
Yeah, I mean the degree of that win,
Yes.
with the fact that Oregon, has been in the conversation for the championship game in their conference, and yeah, they've been up there with Mario Cristobal. So, but Utah State, to their credit, right? They just won a championship.
Sure.
They won their bowl game. They beat, I believe it was Oregon State. So I was just like, that was the only one that gave me a little bit of pause. I was like, well, Bama feels like a top 5 team to me, but yeah, I guess just the degree of Utah State as an opponent was what brought it down to 9, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Got
so when you started in on that question, I didn't know if I had overrated Alabama or underrated Alabama.
Yeah. Just I mean that was the only one I saw that was like, what? Because I mean, Bama, to me, they with the pieces that they have, that
Well, I'm not ranking that.
right, of course, right. Did you factor in also, like, I'm wondering if the fact that he pulled a lot of his starters and kind of the fourth quarter there was no points, is that also part of it?
No.
Okay,
No, I didn't get that detailed or
Got
nuanced
it.
with it.
just
Yeah,
curious.
anybody thinks that I'm underrating Bama, it's a resume ranking. I just picked this team to win the national championship a week ago. So I don't
Yeah.
think that they're the 9th best team in the country. That's not what the ranking is.
Got it. Yep.
Yeah.
I think it helps not just me, but I think some of the audience think about how, like, what goes into these. So my other thing was Michigan. I know I'm sure you are excited to talk about that. But just briefly, I think the Michigan fan base is beyond ready to see what JJ McCarthy could do, even against a high school level opponent in Hawaii. It'll be a good game for him, I think, to get himself settled in a little bit, get himself some easy touchdowns. Vandy scored 400 yards of rushing against Hawaii. So I'd imagine that JJ run game, Blake Corum, Donovan Edwards, and the backups, we might even see the water boy in there in the fourth quarter running up the middle like we did in the Rutgers game. So we've talked a little, you've been talking about Cade versus JJ all week, and so I don't want to bore you too much on that.
All
but
off season. Yeah.
So Harbaugh knows. Here's like the way I have to think about it in my head, because on the one hand, I'm like, how does he not know that JJ's better? And then I think back, okay, Harbaugh knows more about football than most people put together. He's been a player, he's been a coach, he's been everything. He was around programs with his dad. He knows football, and I'm thinking maybe to keep the locker room together, with Cade being nominated a captain, like, he had a lot of esteem of a lot of the players. So maybe this is how he had to play it to get to JJ being named the starter.
Yeah.
Do you think that had something to do with it?
Oh, yeah. This is more difficult than it seems. It's easy for us to sit here and say JJ is more talented, play him. But yeah, Cade has the respect of a team that voted him captain. That's a big deal. Football players take that seriously. They're not just arbitrarily saying, this guy's the quarterback, I guess I'll vote him captain. No, that's a secret ballot. He obviously earned that degree of respect. I think that Harbaugh has a sense of loyalty to a player who, when his job was maybe not on the line, maybe it was on the line, at a point when his job was precarious following a down 2020 season, here's the guy that he went with when it was Joe Milton out of the gate in the previous and carried him through to a Big Ten championship and helped him to accomplish something that has been hounding him for his entire stay at Michigan. Not beating Ohio State, not getting to a Big Ten championship game and winning it. And here's the guy at the most important position on the field who made it happen for him, regardless of how much credit we want to give Cade McNamara for what happened. He was the leader. He was the quarterback. and he did statistically turn in a solid season. So I think there's a sense of loyalty that this guy, he's done everything I've asked him to do, and he performed on the field and led us to a championship. And
yeah, and then we see the QBR of both of them in game one, in a game that JJ was like, this was supposed to be Cade's audition, right, for the starting job to keep his job. But you'd think if Cade had won, if we had seen Cade go lights out, if Harbaugh had seen Cade go lights out in spring, Michigan, Ben, love the comments, Ben. So so Harbaugh sees this with his own eyes, Cade in the spring, Cade in the fall camp. You would think that he would have just named Cade the starter outright if he was just blowing it away over JJ. Cade would have probably been named the starter going into this. I think JJ just made up ground in fall camp to the point where this had to even be a thing, to have this audition where Cade auditions to try to keep his job, and then JJ gets an equal ground audition against an also terrible team, Hawaii. So do you think that had something to do with it? Just I think JJ probably just made up some ground in camp after being out for spring. And maybe if JJ had been in spring, who knows what would have happened in this situation.
yeah, I got to think that if Cade outplayed JJ during the fall camp, then he would still be the starter. I would think that if JJ outplayed Cade, but not to a ridiculous extent, but was somewhat better, then Harbaugh would have done what he ended up deciding to do. I think that makes sense.
Yeah. So if you want to hear more about, and you said I could do this, Mark, so I'm going to do it. But if you want to hear more about the Michigan games we're doing, I'm doing with D4 Sports, who's also a Patreon member, Brandon. And every week we're going through all the stat lines, we're going through the plays, and we get really deep into it. We go really into some of the different aspects of it. So that's happening every week. And
is that on D4's channel?
Yep, D4 Sports. Yep.
Okay, we're going to drop that link into the chat here so everybody can catch up with their analysis. YouTube threw you at me the other day. That's when I dropped in. I saw you guys. You know how YouTube gives suggestions, so I was glad to see that. And check out. There we go. So we've just dropped a link in the chat there. Check out John's work with D4 Sports over on their channel.
Thanks so much. And, those of you who are Patreon members, I'm sure we'll be hanging out after this show ends. And, those of you who aren't Patreon members yet, folks, it's $5. And you get all this cool stuff. You get Mark's betting guide. You get to hang out with the knuckleheads at the Voice of College Football, and lots more. So consider joining. And that's it for me, Mark.
Thank you so much, John. Always appreciate it. You have a good night and enjoy the 63-3. That was the last time they got together. So
yep.
Michigan's only a 52-point favorite. So
That's it.
May not reach 60. I don't know when the last time they were that big of a favorite, but you did drop the Rutgers game of 2016, something in that range. 18?
14 was the one we lost, I think. 14.
No, but the 78 to
nothing.
Oh
yeah, 78 to nothing was 16. Yep.
I'm a nerd for box scores. That's one of my favorite box scores because you look at it and it's just a complete annihilation. You see how bad in the box score that it is. Even I think Rutgers had negative rushing yards or something. It was just abysmal. All right, John. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Mark.
We'll see you. All right. I believe we've got this is my educated guess that we've got an Auburn fan here. Tide Guy's joining us. No, sorry. Bad joke. Tide Guy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I've had a pretty good week this week. Listening to Texas tell me that they're 7-1-1 against me.
Well, yeah, that's what they've got to hang on to.
But I like to give it back to them. Do you know that the Queen was 1 year old the last time Texas beat Vanderbilt.
Who was?
The Queen, the one who
Oh,
Queen
the
who just passed
Queen.
away. She was 1 year old the last time Texas beat
Oh,
Vanderbilt.
so this is seriously, those games were that long ago?
Yeah, and Vandy actually has a winning record against Texas.
Yeah, Vandy's got quite a roll against like a collection of teams. So does Rice, as you know.
Yeah. Rice is 3-0, 54, 55, and 56. They beat us.
Wait, the Queen was 96, so she was born in 26, roughly.
Yeah.
I might be off by a year. So the last time Texas beat Bama was in 27?
No, the last time they beat Vanderbilt.
Oh, the last time they beat Vanderbilt.
Yeah,
okay.
the last time they beat
Okay,
Bama was 82. I think it was the Cotton Bowl, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was Vanderbilt.
I was going to say, because, those Texas Bama games in the 60s and 70s and bowl games. Yep, I got you.
Yep. I also wanted to thank Corey from the Iowa channel.
Yeah.
Talking about how, Alabama will struggle when Saban is gone. I think his dad told me back in, the early 80s how bad we were going to struggle and never win again when Bear left. And, 7 championships later, we're still around. I don't think we'll have as big a struggle once we lose Saban as we did with Bear, because Saban's recruiting at such a high level. The talent's going to be there. So, we might not win championships. We might not win, but we're not going to drop like we did when we lost Bear. We're not going to go, 7-5, stuff like that. We'll still be respectable.
On a side note, before we get back to that conversation, it bothers me when I forget things, because I can't even believe that I uttered the statement about Texas. I didn't hear your comment about Texas Vandy, and I thought you were talking Texas Bama, and I'm thinking 20, and then all of a sudden, boom, yeah, I'm looking at the series right now. Shoot, I watched the 1982 Cotton Bowl when Texas beat Bear Bryant, and that was his second to last season. 2 really good teams at the Cotton Bowl. 14-12. Remember watching that. That was the last time they got together before the BCS championship game in 2009. But back to your thoughts about Bama without Saban. I just think, he's put them on such amazing footing that I think I can even see him being somewhat involved in the hiring process to say, I want this to continue. I want to have my input. And of course, they should want his input to say, this should be the next guy, or, we should be looking at these 3 or whatever. To keep up the pace that Saban's on, nobody's going to do that. It's just mathematically impossible. But to continue to be an elite top 5 to 10 program, I just don't see them falling off. Yes, they did between, who did you have immediately after Bear? Was it Ray Perkins right after
Perkins.
him?
We had
Then
Perkins.
It was Bill Curry.
And Curry.
Dean Stallings, of course, who
then
won
we got Stallings, and then
Mike DuBose.
DuBose. Then we had a coach that couldn't keep his pants on and didn't even coach the game for us, and Price. And then we had Franconi, who coached a year, and then he bailed off to Texas A&M.
Yeah.
And then Shula, and a lot of Bama fans get on Shula, but they got to remember, we were on probation. We lost, we had restrictions on recruiting and that. So, he was there during a tough time. And I'm not saying he was a great coach, but I think he's a little better than what Bama fans give him credit for, considering what he faced.
Yeah, they had a nice 10-2 Cotton Bowl win with Shula there.
Yep.
In 05, I think.
Yep.
I was there covering the team when Stallings, right at the end of Stallings, and then through DuBose is when I was down there. And it's an interesting comparison between Bama and Auburn, between Bear and Saban. It's very comparable. So you know what it's like to lose to Auburn, and you know what it's like for them to have the upper hand, although it's inconceivable at this point. But Tupperville, of course, won 6 straight.
Yeah, I still have nightmares on Fear the Thumb. That when Auburn won all them in a row, it still gives me nightmares to even think fear the thumb. And I also wanted to give you a quick little story. I don't know if you've ever heard this about Iowa. I used to live in Iowa. I was just outside of Ames, but most of my family, opposite my dad, who's a Bama fan, obviously, but were Hawkeye fans. And one of the stories I always thought kind of amazed me. And at first, I was young. I was 9 years old when this happened, but you've heard of Reggie Roby, obviously,
Yep.
the kicker.
Yep. Miami Dolphins. Yep.
Do you know, though, when he signed with Iowa, he was a quarterback and he had an arm. I mean, he could throw the ball. And he, at the time, was probably the best athlete on the team. But they had a quarterback, Chuck Long, as you know, who obviously was a great quarterback. So they didn't know what to do with Roby. And he didn't really want to, but they made him a punter and kicker. And that probably turned out as the greatest thing for him because he had, 15 years in the NFL?
Oh, yeah.
You know, but who would think of putting one of your best athletes as your punter?
He also had this unique punting style that his leg went higher than any other punter in the country. He whipped it so high.
Yeah, it was almost like a karate kick. Because he got up there.
Yeah.
But that always amazed me that he came out of East Waterloo. And like I said, he was a quarterback and a really good quarterback. But they just couldn't use him at quarterback because of Chuck Long. And like I said, they made him a punter, and you just wouldn't think of putting your athlete in a punting position. I didn't know if you'd ever heard that story or not.
If I did, I forgot it. I wouldn't be surprised if I knew it at one point and just forgot it. But yeah, I'm very familiar with Reggie Roby and watching him punt. But yeah, I either didn't know it ever or I had forgotten about his quarterback days in high school.
And the other thing I'd like to say, and I know you brought it up a lot in that, but anybody out there who is not a Patreon, I'm telling you, it's the best $5 you'll ever spend. We have so much fun at night after all these shows are over. We get on Discord, you know, we have calls, we have chats all day long. I'm telling you, it's the best $5 I ever spend.
I appreciate that. And people need to understand also that the more people that go in there, the more diversity of conversation. So let's say you're an Oklahoma fan. I don't know how many Oklahoma fans are in there right now. 1, 5, 10. But the more we get, then we can build out that thing to as many different topics as people want. You know, if we figure out a couple months from now, well, you got all these Alabama fans and they just want to talk Alabama, we'll make an Alabama chat and we can do that all over the place. So yeah, it's got pretty much unlimited possibilities.
And what's nice is most of the guys, I mean, I'm a Bama fan, but I can tell you Iowa, I'm like you, we're sports fans. And most of the people in our calls have a favorite team, but we talk every team. I mean, you know, whoever you like, come on in, we'll talk with you. I've learned a lot from people on the Pac-12, you know, because I mean, I wasn't really big in the Pac-12.
Sure.
But you always learn something. And watching you and in your Discord and that, I've learned a lot this year.
That's awesome. Yeah, I got to thank all of you guys, but I don't want to leave anyone out when I choose to pick out certain people that really got it rolling. But yeah, it's amazing. You guys do much better talking to yourselves than me ruining things. So
yeah, we do ramble on. So when you get in there, we do, you know, the one bad thing about it is I don't know how many times I've went in there at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and next thing I know, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, and I should have been in bed a long time ago. But that's the worst thing that's going to happen is you'll be in there too long. But we do have a lot of fun, and I want to thank you for all your shows. I enjoy them all, and
I appreciate that.
For giving us a place to hang out.
Thanks, Tide Guy. I appreciate that. Thanks so much for calling. Call back anytime.
All right. You have a great night.
You too.
Bye.
All right. Appreciate that call from the Tide Guy. Bama fan, looking forward to the Texas game and letting everybody know to join us on Patreon. All right. DeAndre's here to talk some college football. What's going on, sir?
What's up, Mark? How you doing today?
I'm doing well.
That Louisville game is killing me. I took up.
Oh, whoa! I should have got a hold of you on that one. I didn't put that on my
No,
selections, but if I had, I know that I saw that and I thought, man, people are going to overreact to this because I thought, man, take Louisville in 6 points.
yeah, it is what it is. You learn they ain't look good against Syracuse, and we all thought gonna be trash this coming up year. We never know if they are or not. But we believe Willis played last year, Cunningham. We didn't think that Syracuse was gonna beat them. But
Well,
the Rails
Louisville,
proved
they
by
might have
point.
just saved the game. I don't know if you saw this. They just got a pick in the end zone.
Oh, okay. But the Rails proved my point again last night, Buffalo,
Yeah.
about the cover 2 and people just sitting back and say, "Well, we want you to move down the field by you running the ball. We ain't gonna let you pass the ball like you've been doing all this time." And that goes back to my point about DJ Ugale. I think I saw some of the people commenting on our show, and a lot of them say, "Y'all are so negative." And I just think people want to beat DJ up so bad because they want to see Cade play. And there's no guarantee that Cade is going to be any better. We don't know that. Everybody said, well, look at the drive against Georgia Tech. He going against Georgia Tech 3rd and 14. And he has his 3rd and 14. I mean, I really think I think people need to chill on DJ. Because like I said, all you got to do is look at what Buffalo did in Kansas City last night, and they humiliated them on opening night. I know a lot of people say that the Rams just don't play their starters in the preseason, but that cover 2 or that cover that 3-3-5 umbrella is killing teams right now.
Well, I'm going to be a little bit more patient typically than most people too, but DJ has put together a bad season and now a bad game, or not a great game. And I think it's more about what Clemson hopes to achieve than it is, if he was playing for Duke or someone, there would be lesser expectation, of course, but he's the quarterback at Clemson, and no, there's no guarantee that Klubnik's going to do what he did, but there was no guarantee that Trevor Lawrence was going to do what he did when he replaced Kelly Bryant.
But let me ask you this, Ward. There's something else I want to ask you about before I let you go. Okay, I don't want to take up for Kelly Bryant, but they did only lose to Syracuse. And I think Alabama scored 2 defensive touchdowns in that game.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty good team that Trevor Lawrence inherited. He just took
Absolutely.
it over. Yeah, he just took it to another level.
I always understand what you're trying to do, DeAndre. Every time we bring up Trevor Lawrence, that you're trying to bring down his reputation and so forth. I get it. You're just trying to let people know he had a good thing going for him. But you're not comparing Trevor Lawrence and Kelly Bryant.
No, sir. Not sure. Certainly not. I'm not comparing the two, but it's just like Steve Young. I mean, he went from Tampa Bay to 49ers, then all of a sudden he's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. I'm not saying he's not, but a quarterback is only as good as his team around him.
Sure.
I can't even think I can't even think of a quarterback that has won a national championship in recent years that they have a great team around. I go back to Alabama and Jay. What was it? Jay
Barker.
Jay Barker. He was a Heisman finalist. I'm like, for what? What did he do outside of win games? I mean,
he was good at handing off.
Yeah, it's like, come on, man. Some people you got to look at and say, hey, is Trevor Lawrence one of the best quarterbacks ever? Yeah, probably in Clemson history, one of the top 2 or 3. But I'm just saying we got to look at the whole situation. I mean, sometimes we done brought up plenty of quarterbacks that. What's the guy that played with LSU, won the national championship? Was it Flynn?
Yeah, Matt Flynn.
And then he got a big contract for Seattle off of game against Detroit.
Yeah.
mean, come on.
Oh, yeah, he played a meaningless game with the Packers. Yeah, the last game of the season. Yeah, that's almost the same thing that happened to Rob Johnson at
Right.
Buffalo.
But I'm gonna let you go. But I got a question. It's a historical question. So I heard the guy talk about Chuck Long earlier. Did he win the Heisman? And did they go to the Rose Bowl that year? Also, I think isn't that the year that Thurman Thomas, but Barry Sanders won the Heisman? I know he was 85, 86.
88 was Barry Sanders' Heisman year. Did who do what? What was
Chuck
your question?
Long? Chuck Long, the Iowa quarterback.
Well, he finished second to Bo Jackson. That was the closest Heisman vote ever. Before, maybe there was one just in the last 5 years that was closer, but that was always the closest Heisman vote ever. Bo Jackson over Chuck Long. And Long and Iowa, they got blasted in the Rose Bowl by UCLA.
Okay. Now, let me ask you this, too. Did Chuck Long play in the pros? I just don't remember. Like, I remember Todd Blackridge, he was terrible.
Yeah, he didn't do much of anything in the pros. He got drafted in the first round by the Detroit Lions.
Well, that explains a lot.
He was like the 13th pick of the first round, something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, Mark, I'm going to let you go, man. You have a good night, and I'll be ready for it later on. I couldn't get on today because I was out in the woods shooting for my job. So I'll be ready tomorrow after the Furman game.
I appreciate it, DeAndre. Thanks so much.
All right.
Our guy DeAndre is going to be online with Edward Craven after the Clemson-Furman game over on the Clemson channel. They did an outstanding job after the Week 1 game against Georgia Tech. So check out their work on the Clemson channel. Why don't we go 2 more calls and then call it a night? We got Hunter on the line. Hunter, how you doing? Hello, Hunter. Hunter, are you with us? Hello, sir. All right. We are going to go to Ian in Akron. Ian, how are you?
Good. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing just fine.
I got to be the last caller. Is it an early night? What time is it? Okay. No, Mark, I just wanted to call in and say, do you think it's a bit ridiculous how people lose their minds about rankings in week 1? Like, I just hear people talk about them so much. You have rankings. The AP has rankings. There's so many rankings. Everybody's putting out their own rankings. It almost seems pointless to me to do any of that. Like, we know Alabama and who Alabama and Georgia is and all these things, but the difference between the 10th team and the 25th team or whatever, like, sometimes is very minuscule.
Absolutely.
And didn't you say yourself that half of the teams and basically half of the teams in the top 25 are not even going to be in the top 25?
Yeah, I went through the last like 7 or 8 years, and the number's usually 9 or 10. Last year, it was 13 of the preseason top 25 didn't finish in the top 25.
Yeah, so more than half of the teams. Yet you have people spend all this time and energy getting all up in arms and like yelling about the rankings. And presumably, wouldn't you have between week 1 and 2, you'd have the biggest movement because, well, you have preseason rankings, which are whatever they are. And then in week 1, you have the smallest resume you're going to have. And then, the rankings that come out after week 1, people lose their minds. And it's like, you're going to have the biggest movement between week 1 and 2.
Thank you. I wish you could explain this to people because they may believe you and listen to you better than they do me.
Why would that be? Why would they listen to me more than you, Mark?
Well, I'm just saying, you just made the point that I will be making next week when the number 24 team becomes the number 7 team and the number 11 team completely falls out. People will be like, if they freak out over that and they're like, how could the number 11 team be completely unranked the next week? And how could the number 24 team be the number 7 team? Because their resume is only 1 game and now they've doubled their resume. So that the weight of that second game is just as great. And if the 24th 24th best team or the 24th best resume in the country suddenly beats the 5th best resume, well, they're going to skyrocket. Yes.
And not only that, what we're talking about, I mean, you got to kind of consider the fact that a lot of the rankings are already just, there's so many intangibles that it almost sometimes you can't even make sense of it. Like, I mean, you got the preseason rankings. You throw, let's like an example, is Oregon the 11th best team in the nation? Probably not. Is Notre Dame the 5th best? We don't know. Should Ohio State have been ranked over Georgia in a preseason ranking? Like, I'm an Ohio State fan, but I don't think that makes any sense, because what are you basing it off of? When you make a preseason ranking, you have to base it off of the year before and what you know about the team coming in this year. Those are the only two things. You don't know what's going to happen. Everything's uncertain.
What they added, what they lost.
Yeah. Right. And then we had so much movement in the offseason with the transfer portal, all this NIL, all the coaching moves. So, yeah, we know Alabama and Georgia are the most certain teams. We know that Ohio State is the only other team that has a comparable roster, but them last season was not a comparable team. They would have got destroyed by either of those teams. But you still come in here and rank Ohio State, not you, but they.
Yeah.
Or maybe you did too. I don't know. But the point is, you come in here and rank Ohio State higher than the national championship team. Granted, they lost a lot to the NFL, but we can't contradict ourselves when we say, oh, they lost all this talent to the NFL, but then in the next sentence say, but they just reload. They just reload. So it's like, we don't want to, and then on one hand we say, oh, well, nothing's happened yet, so what do the rankings matter? We're very uncertain. We shouldn't, and we can't base everything off last season, but that's really what's happening a lot of the time. So it's like, I don't think Ohio State should start off number 2 and have those kind of expectations when you have a national champion. I mean, Georgia and Alabama should have been 1 or 2, in my opinion. Put Ohio State at 3, but then you're also completely unsure before that Notre Dame game is played if the defense is going to mean anything. Yeah, you added a new defensive coordinator, but they showed they were physical. But the ranking thing and everyone getting up in arms about the rankings, to me, is just kind of ridiculous. You don't have anything to go off of besides one game this week, and even after 2 weeks, a lot of these teams are playing their cupcake schedule, their out of conference schedule. You know what I mean? There's no equitable schedules going on anywhere in college football unless I'm missing something. So how can you say this team's up here and this team's down here when, like, this, yeah, Michigan plays Colorado State, Ohio State plays Notre Dame, like, and there are people that have Michigan at 4 and 5 in there, but Michigan hasn't played anybody. So it's like, none of it makes sense to get up in arms about. So it's fun to talk about, I guess, but it's also delusional.
To your point, I run a channel and I'm trying to get people to watch me, of course. I probably should have produced a preseason rankings because people love to debate it, and I probably should have. I didn't, but I probably should, because it causes all sorts of debate. Now, another thing that people argue at times that is inconsistent is that they think, I hear this a number of times, that people want the defending national champion to be ranked number 1 going into this season. Well, I can agree with that logic. Okay, they won the championship last year, start them out number 1 this year. But if you're going to take that logic, then you need to take it for every other position in the poll. You need to just take last year's final poll and make it this year's preseason poll.
Right. And I guess that brings up a good point, because neither way of doing it makes sense. It doesn't make sense to do it completely that way, because you're not taking into account what they've lost and what they've gained. Yep. But it also doesn't make sense to just throw a bunch of teams in a bunch of rankings based on uncertainty and knowing nothing either. Not knowing nothing. You know some, but every year things are going to happen that you don't expect. So that's what I mean. You know, it is a huge, like, everything we talked about in the off season was a lot of uncertainty and a lot of people up in arms about things. So, I mean, yeah, And that's, I think, why we love college football. There's so much going on. Like, I was initially an NFL fan probably when I was a kid, my first football love, but really NFL news is boring. Like, college football has so much more going on, and it's great. I just think it's like everybody's going to have an opinion. And I think it's a good way to put it is if you're trying to draw conclusions or jump to conclusions after week one, it's a bit crazy. I think, make some observations. Observations oftentimes are going to be great indicators of what could happen, but not, you know what I mean? Like, if you're just people who jump to conclusions, it's like, I guess that's just a lot of fan bases, but it's hard for me to even talk to certain people about it because it's like, what are you even talking about? You don't even know what you're talking about. But I will say, I don't know how much you've talked about Buckeyes, probably a lot. I will say, I agreed with what you said in terms of meaningful win compared to, like, for instance, put it this way. I would agree. It's more meaningful than us just scoring a bunch of points and looking the same as last year. So if someone said, would you rather have won 48-38? Like, would you have felt better about 48-38? I wouldn't have.
No.
Because, you know what I mean? You're not, basically, if you win like that, you gave up 38 points. Your defense didn't change anything. And you probably didn't run the ball all that much. You probably just threw the ball all over the field to score 48 points is all I'm saying. So I agree with you. Meaningful win. I'm excited about their defense in a year under the belt. I think Mayan Williams is a heavily underrated running back. I mean, do you remember the one run? It might have been, I don't know, 12 to 15-yard run or something like that. It was in the first half, I believe. He ran the safety over, and he got hit just enough to try to tiptoe, and he went out of bounds. But otherwise, I think we were on the 9-yard line. He would have he was going to go for, I think we were on the 11 or something. He would have went for 89 yards. He just barely went out. And everybody says, well, Travion's the explosive guy. He could take it to the house any play. This is true. But when they're saying that, they're also trying to say that Mayan doesn't have the ability. And I completely disagree with it, especially he slimmed down this year. He's strong. I mean, Travion's strong too, but Mayan Williams can take it to the house on any play too. And if you don't think that he can, there people who don't think that, they're wrong. I mean, Travion Henderson's high school, I've never seen a high school film of 15 minutes of a guy just running without anybody touching him. So that's what it is. But Mayan Williams is very much improved. You might have the best running back room with those two, best duo in the country. I think Mayan is underrated. I think he's going to keep showing great things. So, but anyway, Mark, if you want to get out of here, that's good. I just wanted to say the ranking people going nuts about the rankings, calm down. They're going to look a lot different in the next few weeks. So,
sure. Absolutely. Well, thanks for calling, Ian. I appreciate it.
All right, sir. You have a great night.
You too. All right. We've got Hunter on the line. We'll bring in Hunter and remind everyone to shop Amazon using the link that we provide. Hunter.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
I'm good.
I don't know what happened. It just kicked me out when I hit unmute.
Don't know what to tell you there.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, I got you.
Yeah. So, man, I'm ready for tomorrow. I'm excited for this Alabama game, of course. I don't think it's going to be close. But I think the more interesting game to watch in the SEC is going to be this South Carolina and Arkansas game.
Yeah, I like that game.
Who does Ohio State play?
Arkansas State.
Okay, yeah. A big time opponent, huh?
Yep.
Let me ask you a question that's college football related, but not actually in game. Do you have any stories of college football related but not actually a game that you know that you have that you've seen or heard over the years?
That I was directly related to?
No, or just anything.
Do I have any college football stories that aren't related to games?
Not necessarily games, but
interesting question.
Like for example, like the story I told you a few weeks ago about Auburn and the transportation breakdown on the way to the national championship game against Oregon.
Yeah.
Any crazy stories kind of like that that's happened over the years?
Oh man, probably none that I'm thinking of right this second. But yeah, probably if I sat here and racked my brain, or something will hit me a week from now. But I'm not coming up with anything right now that fits that description.
I'll give you a little quick story. So my uncle used to coach at Southern Miss during the early 2000s. I'm going to say from probably 03 to 07.
Yep.
And they were recruiting a kid out of Tennessee. And so he goes to this kid's house, and they, go through and home visit him and the head coach at the time. And this was a linebacker they were recruiting. So this kid's dad grilled steaks, and this kid, he said it was a lineman, ate two 20-ounce steaks while they were at this kid's home recruiting this kid. So that's just kind of I'm always fascinated about kind of stories like that. Kind of side stories that from I always ask them stories about recruiting and things that's happened maybe at the facilities or something like that. But anyway, one last thing before I let you go. I heard you and Will talk about the Fresno State game. But any other games that I might want to take a peek at that are not necessarily huge games this week?
Well, let's see what we got. I would say I did have the schedule pulled up to put on the screen, but all right. Here are some decent games off the radar. Missouri, Kansas State, Duke, Northwestern.
I like Northwestern in that game.
Maybe Appalachian State, Texas A&M. Washington State, Wisconsin. I think that Army and Texas San Antonio will be a close game. Houston, Texas Tech. Virginia, Illinois. I'm a bit surprised that Illinois is a 4 or 5 point favorite in that game.
I think it's just because of the quarterback experience, don't you?
The quarterback experience? Virginia's got one of the best quarterbacks in the country.
I thought that kid from Illinois has been there a few years.
Yeah, but Virginia beat Illinois by 4 touchdowns last year, and Brennan Armstrong is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Virginia's got the decided quarterback advantage in that game. So I'm surprised that they're a 4 or 5 point underdog.
How their defense going to be?
Yeah, it's awful.
So that's probably why then.
Most years I would say Arizona State, Oklahoma State, but I don't know that that's going to be a great game. And we'll see who gets a win in the ACC between Boston College and Virginia Tech.
So yeah, well, one last thing I've been meaning to ask you this all the time that we've spoken, I just never gotten around to it. How did you start this channel? How did you get started in doing this? I don't think I've ever asked you that.
Yeah, well, you probably know I was a sportscaster for 9 or 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then-
So I was working at ESPN, and I was actually doing some freelance work for them on .com, where somebody found out about me there and knew my background, and so the head of digital media at ESPN contacted me and said that he wanted to audition me, and he did. And then he also wanted to see my resume tape from, it was 10 or 12 years old at that point. But anyway, auditioned me. And so then he's like, offered me some work on .com. So what I would do was I would have to have a shift where, let's say it's mid-April, and I'd come in for a shift at 7 o'clock at night, and I'd have to anchor a lead-in for all the NHL, NBA, and Major League Baseball games. And then as they became final, I'd get a shot sheet. And if somebody's not familiar with that, it's just a listing of all the plays. You know, second inning, Yankees up 2-0. So-and-so hits a single to right. So-and-so scores. And it's just a very basic rundown to what the plays are on the highlights. And then if you're decent at your job, you of course embellish on all that, and you've got your little catchphrases and you make it interesting. So I would just sit there all night, and I'd basically just get a shot sheet. Okay, the Yankees Twins game went final. They'd give me a shot sheet. I'd go to an audio booth, and I'd do the audio for the highlights, and then it would get uploaded to .com. So anyway, I didn't do it often, as much as they asked me to do, because I had a regular job at ESPN that typically interfered with doing that. But one night, I had somebody call me that I worked with at my regular job at ESPN in production operations, and they said, you know, Mark, you're doing all this stuff for ESPN, and you know, it was fun. You know, they'd throw me $300 or $400 for a night to do voice highlights, so it wasn't that bad a deal.
Not a bad deal at all.
But and they produced an open for me to do my own little 15-minute commentary. But anyway, this guy said, you know what, you can do this on YouTube yourself, you know. And so he basically, and this isn't when everybody and their brother had a YouTube channel. This was, you know, 2010.
So you've been doing this almost
09,
12 years?
10, something like that. So yeah, that's when I officially started this channel. It was in 2010. I didn't really do much with it until like 2013, until I really put some content on here on a regular basis. But yeah, it's basically just a buddy who now owns his own production company who said, Mark, you should do this all yourself on YouTube.
Well, I don't know if Steve Dace is listening, but shout out to Steve Dace and his radio program on the Blaze for shouting you out. That's how I heard about you. And I appreciate what you do, Mark. I mean, you make football season so much more interesting now that we have these shows and little community that we built on the Discord. You know, so guys, if you're not on the Discord, you gotta get on the Discord. It's $5. You buy a copy for $5. I mean, and you get to talk college football. And we have live streams that we do, so it's fun. So I just want to say I appreciate what you do, Mark. It really does make the off season. It makes it not seem like there is off season.
Well, thanks, Hunter. I appreciate that. It's very nice of you. And yeah, we have fun doing it. I'm very blessed to be able to do this. And so I just got to a spot with ESPN where I made a decision to leave. And so I've been doing this for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years in October next month. It'll be 2 years I've done nothing but this.
Well, real quick question.
Yeah.
What in your time at ESPN, did you ever get to meet anybody cool that you got to meet while working there?
Sure. Now, ironically, the people that worked, I don't want to say under me, like weren't as good or anything, but just obviously in the structure. I was in management and people reported to me. So actually those people met famous people more so than I did. just because they were the ones working in the studios and in the production rooms with all of those people, and I didn't. I was in management. I only was there when there was a problem most of the time that had to be worked out. But who did I wasn't. I could have met a lot more famous people than I did. It's just not a big thing. Just didn't really mean much to me. But who did I meet? Man, that's a great question. Who did I? Well, all the ESPN people. Colin Cowherd and Scott Van Pelt and all those guys I'd see in the hallway. A few times a week, and
I like Colin Cowherd.
Talk to those kind of people. In terms of coaches and players, trying to think. That's a great question. I've pretty much erased most of that from my memory. But yeah, in terms of the ESPN personalities, I'd see them every day.
Yeah. I forgot that Colin Cowherd used to work for ESPN, and he switched over to Fox. I like him. I know he rubs some people the wrong way, but he's got a good show.
I think so too. I always liked him. Yep.
All right, Mark. Well, I'll see you sometime tomorrow.
Yep. Thanks, Hunter.
All right. Talk to you later.
Have a good night. We appreciate Hunter encouraging everyone to go to Patreon, and you go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV. You can sign up right there. I get you the Discord link as soon as I see the email come through, and we have a good time there. And who knows? Those guys are probably starting up a stream right now to talk more college football. All right. Appreciate everybody being here. We will have our list of post-game shows. Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska, Iowa, Penn State, Oklahoma, West Virginia, Texas, Bama, maybe LSU. Still have to work on that. Miami, Virginia Tech, USC. I think that covers everything. Oregon, Ben, we can't forget you. And you know what? Special thanks to Ben. I don't know if he's still in here and listening, but special thank you to Ben, because Ben's been in this chat the entire time, encouraging everyone to shop Amazon, use the link, and he's been encouraging people to hit the like button. He's been encouraging people to, of course, join the Discord. All right, folks, appreciate you being here, and we will be here all day on Saturday talking college football with you. So see you then. What is our request here? Will ND. Super Chat's not working. That's awful. Wonder how that happens. Anyway, Will ND. Hey, Mark, can you shout out my channel? Super Chat is not working. First of all, Will ND, punctuation matters. So can you shout out my channel, period? Super Chat is not working. I don't know what your channel is, but I assume it's Will ND. So let's give you a look here. So I'm giving a shout out to something that I can't necessarily endorse, or is it? I see Will NE. I don't think that's you, with 5 million subscribers. Wow, who is this dude with 5 million subscribers? Anyway, I will point everyone and be a good guy to direct everyone to whatever Will's talking about there, but I can't find his channel. So wherever his channel is, you guys find it. Have a good time. Oh, is that Will? Our Will? Well, what's your channel, Will? it's I can't find your channel. Put it in the chat. So Will, put the link to your channel in the chat. And there you go. Because I'm not finding Will ND anywhere. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Tide Guy and everyone else. Thank you for that.